Mm-hmm.
I think we jump in with the women's lacrosse. What do you say?
Yeah, Saturday night, no, Friday night rather. They take on Arizona State, and this week, as a general rule, we thought was going to be the last real test for them for the rest of the season as they go through the America East schedule the rest of the way, which they have traditionally dominated and continue to do so. But it's a pleasant surprise, however, that they score 16 goals in each of the last two games, and 14-4, of course, win over Vermont last Saturday. But taking on number 10 Princeton at Princeton and turning it into a one-side game.
Yeah, and in this game they really kind of just jumped out right from the get-go, right? They have a 7-goal start. And that really like almost like the women's basketball game tonight. They have a seven goal run, and that kind of just dictates the rest of the game. They trade goals after that, but it's kind of almost too little too late for Princeton. They kind of jumped all over them. Hampel with 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points. She leads the way for the Seawolves. Massara with 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists. Rafferty with 4 goals. Hart with 3 goals. The one thing I thought was interesting, Matt, is they went to the Halsell in the goal again. So kind of Joe Spallina been jumping back and forth with his 2 goaltenders there between Campbell and Halsell. And Halsell gets to start for this one. Has a nice game. 9 saves, 8 goals against. So it's a very productive day for her in the goals. It's that what we call embarrassment of riches in the goal there for Joe Spallina. And he seems to be working it really well between the two of them.
Well, the great thing about it is that, we talk about, and I talked about this extensively this past Wednesday when Stony Brook baseball had their midweek game. But most importantly, you think of a game like this, at least in baseball, the midweek games are for getting people work that in positions they wouldn't necessarily otherwise get opportunities in on the weekend to conference series. But this isn't necessarily the case for women's lacrosse. Like we said, this is the biggest game in the second half of the season. And making that move in goal not only is one, a confidence boost for your number 2 goalie, but also a kind of a confidence boost for everybody else. If one goes down, the other one can step in.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Number 10 Princeton, for her to jump in, but also she was a starter last year for Stony Brook. She's Team Canada's goalie, so it's not like she's hasn't seen big games or pressure games. She has performed well in the past, and she did on Tuesday. The one thing I will say that I noticed as well too in this game, Ellie Massara not only had the 4 goals, but she had 12 draw controls. And that seems to be where they might be going a little bit to get some of those draw controls in these bigger games. I think Massara is going to kind of start to take some of the lion's share of those draws. Because I think she's so productive, and you just can't use her all the time because you run her to the ground.
Well, that's why you have her whole. She had 4.
Right. And Hampel usually takes some as well, too. But it was interesting to see Massara having taken so many and to win some of them as well. So she really is such a dynamic player.
Well, she's also kind of emerged into the role because remember that Syracuse game way, way, way back when. It seems like ancient history now. But that Syracuse game for Holst took a lot of the draw controls. And that was a 1-goal game. She actually did a pretty good job considering, but but people started to figure her out, I guess. So in comes Reina Sabella and also Reina Sabella and Ellie Massara. Reina Sabella, of course, a contributor on the offensive end, but Ellie Massara, and she now has become the primary draw control player. But you know what? You have to, base it on your matchups. And there may be a day when Verholst has the opposing draw control player's number and she gets them. But Joe Spallina has proven to be very flexible in terms of, there is no traditional Fogo on his team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He definitely bounces them in and out. He uses who he has. One I think the bigger difference is, though, with between the men's and the women's game is in the women's game they stay on and they're more they're more productive on the offensive end. They're really a part of the game after
Yeah,
they
they're
take the
not.
draw.
You don't really have too many draw control specialists out there. That's true.
Yeah. So it's an aspect of the game I do not like for the men's. I
Oh, you mean
don't like
the
that.
Fogo?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Fogo. In some regards, I can understand that it gives somebody who's a different type of an athlete an opportunity to get on the field. But I don't know. I'd like to see the game started with a ground ball war or battle, shall we say? And you see a little bit more of that in the women's game, where the ball pops up in the air and now we're fighting for it.
Right.
From there, I'd like to see that back again with the men's game. But back to the women here.
But that's the way the game has evolved. It's become such a specialized thing. But yeah, go back to the women. We'll talk about that in a minute when we get to them, because the men had a bye week this week. But we'll talk about that in a bit.
So I just thought it was an excellent win for them, and now you start to see a little bit of the thinning of the herd in women's lacrosse as well, too, as far as a little bit of the haves and have-nots, right? So you're kind of saying to yourself, okay, if they can beat the number 10 team, right, if they can double them up and beat them 16-8, all right, now you're looking at the number 5 seed versus the 10. That's a big spread in a game for me for 8 goals. If it was a 3 or 4 goal game, I'd say, okay, anybody can really win that game. But you would think that if they played again, that Stony Brook would win again, probably handily. So where does that bubble kind of where are you on the right side of the bubble on that one? The better teams, and Stony Brook certainly is in that bubble of the better teams.
Well,
right now, I think
something very interesting. I'm just looking at the most recent Division I women's lacrosse polls, and Stony Brook, depending on which one you're following, and the one I'm looking at here is the Nike USA rankings, and I see North Carolina on top, BC, Northwestern, Loyola. Okay, that's no surprise there. Maryland's now at 5, Stony Brook at 6, Florida right behind them at 7, Syracuse right behind them at 8, Duke at 9, Princeton at 10. But you know what that means? That means that teams that Stony Brook Northwestern is the only team they lost to that's above them. They're at 3, and like we've been saying all along, you want the teams that beat you to continue to succeed because that makes your loss look better. But Syracuse is now below them at 8. So they lost by a goal to Syracuse at Syracuse, though. That's still a quote-unquote good loss. But those are the only 2 losses. And with every win, Stony Brook continues to make its case stronger. You cannot turn down the 6th-ranked team in the nation, and you especially can't turn down the 6th-ranked team in the nation when they beat the 10th-ranked team in the nation by 8 goals on the road, and they beat Florida, who's another top 10 team, lost by a goal to another top 10 team, and not lost by 4 to a team that's above them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And they are they've put themselves in the right position. They really have. I'm intrigued, not necessarily with the America East schedule. The next team, obviously, that they play down the stretch here, that might have some meaning is Yale, because Yale being in the Ivy League, they could play Princeton. I don't know what the rest of their schedule, Yale's schedule, looks like, but they may play a comparable team, and then all of a sudden those comparison of scores might matter, depending on who they play. Yale might be one of those teams. The Binghamton game, we're jumping the gun here, so let's get back to, they beat Arizona State 16-4 on Friday night. That's a nice win for them. I was interested to see Arizona State coming to Long Island to play. That's an interesting trip. I was kind of hoping the women were going out to Arizona State to play.
I think they have. Let me take a look at the history here. I think until you look at their they did go to Arizona State last year. No, correction. That was your first time they met. Correction on that. I thought I was looking at the previous score, but no, this is actually Friday's score I'm looking at. So yeah, this is the first time they met ever. So yeah, it is very interesting. But you know how the Syracuse games came across last year. The first game for the men at Syracuse was that both of them had holes in the schedule, kind of like what the men had this year with this bye week. Bye weeks aren't intentional. Bye weeks if you couldn't find anybody to play.
Yeah, especially on a weekend.
Yeah.
I
So
know this as well too.
to have a team sit like that is never a good idea. But the coming up for the women, however, right behind this, they will, of course, continue on, as you said. They're going to be things are going to be pretty quiet for them because this Binghamton game was scheduled for today was postponed. Now that game, because it's an America East game, will probably be made up. Except if Stony Brook opens up too big a margin, it doesn't matter. They may just say forget it. Especially when Stony Brook's not eligible for the tournament anyway. But if it determines Binghamton's seeding, it might matter.
Yeah, it's interesting. They actually had, this is a sad story for Binghamton. They had a former men's player pass away over the weekend. He must have just graduated from Binghamton. He had moved on to his next school to play at fifth year. Robert Martin had unfortunately passed away, and I'm sure that some of the women on the team, they must have been friends with each other.
Men's lacrosse student athlete. He was an active player. No.
Yeah.
He is 1998. That would make him 24 years old. Was he still active, or was he? He was an alum?
I want to say he was he was an alum from Binghamton. He was playing at a different school.
Okay.
When I was looking it up, and he passes away. And obviously, they postponed the game.
And they postponed the men's game that was supposed to be an NJIT this past Saturday.
Yeah. So that's just a real unfortunate situation going on there. But if you look at the women's schedule, I don't know. I mean, they could because they don't play in the conference tournament. But I mean, you're looking at April 30th. It's not a lot of whole. Well, I guess maybe sometime this week they could play. Oh, they play April 9th. They play April 16th, Saturday. You can sneak in another weekday game somewhere in there if you want to get that game in. But that's unfortunate.
Of course, the other problem is
like
the game is supposed to be a Binghamton home game. So you got to figure out a way when they're going to travel because they got a lot of road games coming up. That, like you said, this coming Saturday, they're home against New Hampshire, but they go up to UMass Lowell the following Saturday. That maybe you'll sneak a midweek game in there. Home against UMBC the Saturday after that, and then the Monday immediately following, the 25th, they go to Yale and they finish up at Albany. So actually, when you think about it, Lowell and Albany may be your opportunities there to go up a couple of days earlier and sneak in a game against Binghamton, even though I'm thinking about this, although they're upstate, they're nowhere near Binghamton.
Yeah,
Binghamton, you go up to Westchester and turn left and go through the southern tier. And, it's Route 17. I've made that trip. And, Albany is a shorter trip, believe it or not, folks. I mean, matter of fact, Binghamton is a long enough trip that's almost the same distance from there from here, Long Island to Binghamton, it is to Washington D.C.
Yeah, and I think for us living on Long Island, we just anytime you're getting out of the city, it's a shorter trip.
Well, the city is an embolism. I mean, it takes an hour to get through it.
Right. Yeah. Just
no matter what time of day.
On a good day. So, but anyway, on Friday they beat Arizona State. Massara's 5-1 with 6 points. She's got 11 draw controls in that game. Hart 4-2 with 6 points. Sabella 2-1. And I have to say, Matt, I think Sabella is really having herself a nice season as well too. I think she's one of the players. Along with Rafferty as well too. But I think Sabella is one of those players that's really having an underrated season. I think quietly going under the radar. She's got 18 points, 5 assists. She seems to be always involved in the action, and I do really like the way that she plays. So,
and the interesting thing too with her is that we're talking about her offensive numbers, and last year she was co-defensive player of the year.
Yeah. She just, she's just very dynamic on the field. She still has 11 caused turnovers as a defender as well too. So I think that is
great two-way player.
Yeah, she really is. And I think she just, I think she symbolizes a lot of what the women team is like, right? They play exceedingly hard. They're very unselfish. They share the ball really well, and she's one of those players that does that, and she doesn't get a ton of recognition for it, and I think she really deserves it. I think it's one of these times we kind of look at it and say, yeah, she really deserves a little more credit than what she's getting right now.
Well, here's the thing about this team. While we've talked about so many contributors on it, uh, there isn't a Courtney Murphy, there isn't an Allie Kennedy, there isn't an Old Miller on the team. So you're thinking that this may be a kind of a transition team, but they've proven themselves to be just as strong as any of those teams of previous years.
Yeah, I think you're right. A little less star power, but a little more team power
Yeah.
for them. I would agree with that, right? Claire Levy is an excellent player as well too. She's like a human clear. The double goaltending that you have as well too, I think is outstanding for them. You can just kind of keep rotating them in and out as they get hot and when one needs a break.
And when you're watching the game or calling it, I mean, you're looking. You get to a point where you know everybody by position, not even reading their numbers, and on the right side of the net is Kalen Hart is always going to be there, and you don't even have to think about it. Where the ball's going to the right side of the net, there's Hart. And she gets her goals. She had three. Let's see, was this which game am I looking at? Because they both scored 16 goals, but no, this is the Princeton game. Okay, she had three against Princeton, but it gives you an idea that that is as we segue to the men, the kind of dependability that the men have not really developed yet.
They came to such a strong start early in the season. The men, they come up with that four wins right away, right? So you're feeling really, really good about the men.
Yeah, and you're starting to see them establish their sets and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden they hit a little bit of. Actually, I shouldn't say that because that game against Rutgers was not hitting a wall. That game against Rutgers was North Carolina Duke last night. Okay.
That was a great lacrosse game. That really was. That was
it was probably serious toe-to-toe action.
Yeah, that probably is the best that they've played all season, right? It just happens to occur in a loss, but that was a really, really good game. The Brown game is a clunker in the second half, right? They just kind of lose momentum in that game. UMass Lowell, they kind of blow their doors up. After watching Syracuse, I watched Syracuse play this weekend, and they got their doors blown off this weekend, and it kind of just reconfirms they're 18 in the country. I don't think they should be 18 in the country. Syracuse, I don't think they're that good. That was a bad game. The Syracuse game was a bad game for them. I think they played poorly against Syracuse.
You think there's a little intimidation by the Orange, the tradition and stuff like that? I mean, they played them last year, and Syracuse handled them pretty well up there. But Syracuse was a stronger team last year.
Yeah, and I think last year too, they were like, from what I understand, they were changing in the parking lot before the game started. It was totally not what you're expecting to do. And then last year, where you didn't expect anything, right? But I would definitely say that you think you're playing Syracuse, you're playing the Orange as well too, so you're playing the mystique of them. But then you go out and you have a clunker against Albany as well too, clunking like a first half that is.
The other day when I was setting up the equipment for Friday's game, I stopped by the stadium the day before on Thursday because I knew it was going to be around on Friday because of the student takeover, and also I had another gig to worry about. But I ran into Coach Anthony Gallardi and I said, "What happened?" I said, "We couldn't win faceoffs." That's really, you said, the bottom line. You can't score if you don't get the ball, and we weren't getting the ball. They found themselves in the second half, but again, too little, too late.
Yeah, and that it's funny because when you have a team, and when you're a lacrosse team, you kind of say to yourself, okay, what's the foundation of our team, and you kind of learn that as it goes along, what the foundation of your team is, and for them. For the majority of their games, Renz Conlon has been the foundation of their team. That's like the building block that you can start with. We're going to win faceoffs because we have him.
Right. And you win the majority of them. You're not winning like 2/3 of them. You're still winning almost 60%.
Yeah. So you get accustomed to doing that. And then a game when you don't, you you wish they could have figured it out earlier, but in a game that they don't win faceoffs, who's the next person that you go to? And then when that doesn't work, what's the next bag that you have
It was, I mean,
of your tricks?
yes, you have to. There's no doubt that was a factor. But as I said, I wish I had seen the game because we were too busy because the women's game was airing at the same time. I didn't really jump into it until the second half. Excuse me, the second half. But I wish I had seen the first half because I've seen them go up against TD Yerlin. Of course, it's a different team personnel on both sides. But I've seen what happens when you have a dominant Fogo. And the answer to that is forced turnovers. And when you have one goal off a short stick D midi, that means your offense was doing nothing.
Yeah,
and you basically were shut out for 30 minutes.
And that kind of question that we've been talking about all year, and I've, called them a high volume shooting team. When you're not winning faceoffs, it's got to be a little less than high volume, and it's got to be a little more of an accurate shooting team, right? The shots have to become a little more precise, and then you're right on the money with that, Matt.
And it's kind of like, what? High risk, high reward. We talk about that. We talk about teams that generate a lot of shots and they don't always find the mark. This team had gotten to the point where they were very precise in their shooting. They would always outshoot their opponent. Even if their opponents outshot them in terms of overall shots, Stony Brook would always have the edge in shots on goal. They're losing that. And I'm starting to wonder, yes, generate offense, that's great. But, flinging the ball at the net and not hitting the net is not going to generate any offense.
No, and you know what? I think and you're right. I'd like to have seen that game as well too. I'm interested to see how they come out this weekend. But in lacrosse, really, what you're doing is you've created when you dodge and you're shooting or one of the two, you're creating an atmosphere where somebody has to slide to you. And once you've drawn the slide to yourself, you really want to move the ball twice and let that guy have an opportunity to do it. So maybe that's what they got to really refocus on offensively is they're dodging and getting an opportunity to shoot, but you force the same in basketball. You force the defense to rotate. Once you force the defense to rotate, if you move the ball quick enough, you're going to get another open shot. And I think that's where they got to get to, where they got to kind of get the ball to the next man. Similar to what we were talking about with the women, like we were saying that they're playing more as a group. They play better offense. They share the ball a lot more. And not to say that the men don't share the ball. That's not what we're saying. But I think they can improve upon that, right? And then that would improve. They can improve their shooting percentage. They get the shots on cage. And I think it's going to make a big difference for them. And in the Albany game, they go, they only win 7 faceoffs in the Albany game versus Albany's 19 faceoffs. And this is a big one as well too. When you're not winning faceoffs, they didn't clear the ball 3 times as well. So that's 3 less possessions that you're having. And when you're not winning faceoffs, those hurt. And they only had 9 saves on the day. So if you're not winning faceoffs, you have a couple and 3 errors clearing the ball, and you don't have as many saves as you'd like. Not to say that Anthony Palmer played poorly. He just didn't make a lot of saves that day. That happens. When you don't do those 3 things, how do you expect to win?
Well, here's something that's also interesting. I made this point last week, but take a look at the faceoffs again. Okay, 7-2 Albany in the first half, and then 12-5 in the second half. But the scoring, on the other hand, that went 9-4 Stony Brook in the second half. So Stony Brook figured out a way. Like I said, too little, too late. We have to go back to that. It's more than just the face-offs.
Yes, and it's going to be, So I thought a little bit about what I would have done here. Is I would have, after the Albany game, I would have chucked them for a couple days. To be honest with you, I would have, as a coach, and I don't know if this would have been right or wrong. It's just what I would have done. So Sunday you'd be off no matter what. I might not even practice Monday and Tuesday. Might just do, workout stuff because you're not playing for, over a week. So, I don't want to say what do you need to practice for, but like it's almost like a spring break in a sense. Guys, you're out of here. We're gonna come back on Wednesday. You got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you play. You still have 7 days before your game. So give them an opportunity to get away from it because you've been going since the first or second week of January.
Well, one thing
You know,
they did practice on Thursday because I got a chance to watch that a little bit over at Laval, but uh, coming up for them, we talk about they had the bye week, they had the bye on Saturday, but that does not necessarily mean they get the whole week off because they do go back to work on Tuesday, April 5th. So it's a 10-day layoff where they go up to Dartmouth up in New Hampshire. And Dartmouth's not ranked, but the history with Dartmouth, they actually have some. They are 3-4 overall, and the last time they faced them, 1998. You probably played in that game. 18-8. That was a win against an Ivy. That must have been a big win at the time.
yeah, it's funny you say that. I actually did play in that game. And I do remember that was a home game for us. We won 18-8. They had jumped on us early, I think, and then we came back and just kind of rolled on them. And I'll tell you what happened that game. We went out and played and practiced in Colorado for a week, and we played Air Force, and I think we played Denver as well too. We actually beat Denver, and we lost to Air Force, but we came back and we played that Saturday against Dartmouth, and I think our lungs were just expanded. And we just ran. I think we just ran them off the field. We played them the year before as well, and we beat them the year before
By 3, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a good win for us. They were better the year before for sure. It was interesting to see them come back onto the schedule as well too. I like the Ivies. I like playing the Ivies. I think it's a good thing. I think it also is a measuring stick for you as well too because they play in such a difficult conference. So you can measure up. All right, where's Dartmouth at this year?
And then, where's Dartmouth at? Actually, you'd be pleasantly surprised. Oh, that's 2020. Sorry. Let me get 2020. I'm looking for. Let me get the Ivy League in here, the Ivy League site. Okay. We get 2022. Here we go. Because they skipped 2021 completely. They are at 0-2, but they're 4-4 overall. They're 0-2 in conference, but 4-4. And I'll tell you who they played. Lost by 2 to Merrimack, won 4 in a row, including one. They beat Vermont by a goal. They lost to Ohio State by 6, 12-6. Got beat up pretty good by Harvard, not Hartford, 19-10, and they lost by a goal to Cornell. That's what they're on current 3-game losing streak.
So the 12-6 game versus Ohio State. Ohio State's ranked. I think they're like 11th in the country, right? So that is. I don't want to say it's an impressive loss, but that means that they must be pretty good. To be able to. I guess they get blown out, but not really blown out. But they can hold their own. I think it's going to be a good game.
Well, Harvard is the best team in the conference right now. They're 2-0, but Cornell's right behind them. So they lost to Taiwan to Cornell, got beat up by Harvard. Harvard, yeah. They got to make sure I say Harvard and not Hartford.
Yeah.
There's actually it's funny because it kind of reminds me. Remember the movie Pride of the Yankees?
Yes.
Where Lou Gehrig, tells his mother he's going to be an engineer like his Uncle Otto. And he says, I just got picked up by Hartford, and she thought it was Harvard. So she sent letters to Harvard to Lou, but then his father would put him in another envelope and send him to Hartford. And then he gets called up to the Yankees. But yeah, that kind of reminds me of that. But in any case,
the one connection that they do have with Dartmouth is Brendan Callahan is the head coach at Dartmouth, and he was a player for Stony Brook many years ago. Right?
Yes, he was.
Was he a goalie? If I remember,
I believe he was. Yeah, he was. Callahan was a goalie.
Yeah, he was a nice player for Stony Brook. He graduated, I think, in 2005. if I'm right.
I
Maybe
think you're right.
maybe earlier than that.
I think you're right.
Maybe 2000. Yeah, it says bachelor's degree in 2007. So, um, he was a nice player. He's a nice guy as well too. So maybe that's a connection. You get back to get back to be able to play your alma mater,
Well,
right?
also,
So,
you know what it is? It's part of the family tree, so to speak.
mm,
The Stony Brook family tree, which is putting down roots. I mean, we always talk about Lars Tiffany, but he's not the only one. Okay, you got guys like Greg Canella. You got guys like, you know, a few others as well. I mean, uh, the uh, the Chamberlains, Sean Chamberlain and
yeah,
Brendan. Okay, yeah, both doing a lot of coaching. So yeah, you got a whole bunch of people with Stony Brook heritage now part of the lacrosse establishment.
yeah, and he's a good one as well too. He's a real nice guy. I think he's a good coach, and that's a fun game then for Stony Brook. I know that he played for. I guess would he have played for Lars Tiffany?
Uh,
2007. He probably would have played for
he would
SBM
have,
Lars
yeah.
Tiffany. Yeah. So, um, and that one's at Dartmouth. So I think that's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a highly competitive one. It should be a game that you would hope that Stony Brook should get the victory. I think they're a better team. And then you can get yourself on a little bit of a roll. You play them, you play NJIT. Binghamton, which actually is I think going to sneakily be a good game. And then UMBC and you finish up Vermont. So I like the way that the schedule finishes up for them. I would have taken, like I said, a couple days, and I would have ramped it back up and got them, get the guys refocused and go to Dartmouth. Otherwise, that 10 days could have been a long 10 days. You got to do something a little different to get them back into, I don't want to say play shape, but like just mentally back to playing. Sometimes a couple of days off can do it. And I took a coaching class one time years ago with a guy. He said, if you need a day off as a coach, the players needed one 2 weeks ago.
Good point.
And yeah, and after the Syracuse game, I kind of felt like they needed a break. It
You know
just
what?
been a little too much.
Just to reiterate what we were saying without actually seeing it in front of us, you said Ohio State was ranked. They're up as high as 9. Harvard's ranked. They're 15, and Cornell is 7. So that's their gauntlet. Okay,
Right.
they're the toughest part of their schedule. So they didn't win any of those games, kind of like what happened to Stony Brook. But for the rest of the way, the remaining games in the Ivy League, they've got 4: Yale, Princeton, Penn, and Brown. And none of them are ranked right now. So yeah, that was the toughest part. Cornell, despite the fact they're second in the conference right now, is ranked higher than Harvard. But that happens all the time.
But it is a nice game, nice 2-game week for them. Like Dartmouth, and then you play NJIT, and then you wait a week before you play Binghamton. I like the stretch right now. I think if they can jump back in, I think this might be the game. I don't want to say the game of the season, but if they get themselves right on Tuesday, I think it could propel them to have a nice finish to the season. I think if they lose to Dartmouth, it could make a long season. And I know we've talked about it a ton, but it does make that not playing an America East Conference tournament and an opportunity to play that does make the season even longer. I think if you lose.
Okay,
You know,
some good news and bad news with this upcoming game on Tuesday. The bad news is, since it's in New Hampshire and we have another game that day, softball game, correction, that day, we will not be bringing it to you. It's also a 3:00 start, so it conflicts directly with the softball. It will be on ESPN Plus, so you got that going for you. You can watch it, but what's coming up is what we're going to be segueing into, because we will be busy this week broadcasting, despite the fact that we have some teams on the road, because the softball team finally, got some home games in, because they made their debut on Thursday. We're not able to broadcast it because of the weather forecast and some logistical issues, but they had a matchup against Sacred Heart, and let's take a look at what's in store for them right now, because they did what they took care of business against Sacred Heart, in their home opener. Just taking a look here, winning 10-6 and 7-0, and then they had a 3-game set against Maine at home, and they won the first one 5-0. Lost the second one 8-7 in 8 innings, but did not play today. And it just says canceled, but I'm not sure why they didn't play. We'll find out here if I can get any information from the news part of the site here.
Yeah, I saw that earlier. I think they called it for rain. Maybe they anticipated.
Well,
that
it
bad
was
weather
kind of wet today, but I wasn't sure where it was in the Stony Brook area. But they,
Oh, you know what? If it rained hard last night, and then you anticipated rain today. I wonder if it was like a getaway day for them.
well, the other thing about it is that field. Remember, there's no grass in the middle, so and that field is grass. It's not field turf. It may have just been too muddy.
Yeah. So they play early in the week against St. John's, and they lose a tough one. 1-0. St. John scores in the first inning, and that's basically it for the rest of the day. I guess cold bats. They only had 4 hits the entire time. Shelby Denman, it's tough for her. I mean, she's a losing pitcher in that effort. So it kind of reminded me of the Mets a little bit. The pitchers throw gems and they don't get any bats going for them, and that was kind of like the game for them. She had 7 strikeouts, only gave up 6 hits and 1 run. So I think that's a tough, midweek loss. Then they play, which I thought was interesting. They played on Wednesday, and they played a doubleheader on Thursday against Sacred Heart. Did you find that like an interesting blip in the schedule there as well, too, Matt?
Yeah, a huge blip in the schedule because it's non-conference.
Right. So
yeah, why have a non-conference doubleheader midweek, and then 2 days later play a 3-game conference set?
Yeah.
No, correction on that. A 5-game conference set, because you had the doubleheader on Saturday. Correction. So they got that in and split it, and then the Sunday game was canceled. Okay, let me get that straight here. But they had a 3-game set in conference, and then you have 2 on Thursday. That had to be some kind of numbers game where they need a certain number of games to fill out their schedule, but that's weird.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is if you're looking at the schedule, they play St. John's in Queens, right? But then they're home for the 2 against Sacred Heart, home for the 3 against Maine. St. John's again, they're home, and then Seton Hall for 2, they're home. So they are in the midst of a home stretch, like a home game stretch here.
Well, it gets even weirder, because then they've got 2 on the road at Providence, a doubleheader Saturday, April 9th. And weirder still, the following Wednesday, April 13th, they have a doubleheader against UMBC, and that's it.
Yeah, that is an interesting. And then they got the triple against the series against Binghamton. But that is a weird Providence to only have 1 game in a weekend or 1 day. It's just a Saturday. That's almost like an off weekend for them to play. Just to go up to Providence and play 2 games.
Right.
Even though for a softball or baseball, that's really not a lot.
Now, the St. John's game, again, a home and home with St. John's. This is obviously a case of trying to fill your schedule out. Because, baseball has done the same thing. It did that with Iona. Okay. But here's where you're trying to get, so you're scheduling locals, and locals need the games as much as you do.
Right. Right. And then it's just travel situation, right? It's an hour to Queens, right? You can play that game.
Yeah.
Any day. So, but anyway, they go and they got, so they have Sacred Heart they play the double against Sacred Heart on Thursday. In the first game, Dawn, how do you say her name? Bodrug. She gets the win. Costello goes 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs. Badger with a homer, 3 RBIs. Kapinski with 2 RBIs herself, and I think that really is the kind of the mark of the game. There is the bats came back alive in the first game, right? Scoring 10 runs, helping the pitcher out, and a bunch of RBIs. The second game in that doubleheader, though, is Milas her first complete game shutout. So Ashton Milas' first complete game shutout. They go win 7-0, and I think that's a big step for them as well too, as a team in particular. For her to come in and have a complete game shutout. Somebody else you can go to, right, in your bullpen, or not in your bullpen, excuse me, in your I'm searching for the word here. Somebody you can go into your rotation and be successful with. So I thought that was important for her.
Yeah, you don't want even though the softball pitchers do throw a lot of innings, you don't have people throwing both ends of a doubleheader.
Right. So they have the Saturday doubleheader versus Maine. Boudreaux, did I say that right now? I'm saying it wrong. Dawn
Bodrig, yeah.
Bodrig. She has her third career no-hitter that day. I mean, that is super impressive to do that. And they win. They win that game 5-0. Right, so you're feeling good about yourself right there. You got a couple nice wins in a row. She throws another nice game. Costello breaks the tie in the third inning with a home run.
16 strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean that's an impressive.
And there are only 21 outs in a 7-inning game.
Yeah, I know. I mean that is super impressive.
She walked
that's how
one,
that goes.
Which means that means the 5 outs were from contact.
Right. I mean that's a game you won't forget. I would imagine. I think it's going to be hard for her to forget that kind of a win, right?
I mean in softball, it's always technically possible. I wonder if it's ever happened or how often it's happened where a pitcher just strikes out every batter.
That would be tough to do. You would probably see that in. I would think you might see that a little bit in the high school level.
Yeah, like Jenny Finch. I wonder if she's ever done it.
Yeah. I was in a. I saw there was a because in high school they played. You generally only play one game. They play they play each team twice. You play 14 games. You play one game a day. And the pitcher can pitch multiple times. And when you have a pitcher in high school, you can really just dominate, right? Unless you go up against another team that has a pitcher. And if you're going against a bad team, a predominantly bad team, you could shut them out. You could check them all out.
Yeah,
you really could do that. That's got to be hard if you're a team that doesn't have a pitcher.
But 16 of 21 outs on strikeouts.
I know.
And I'm just looking at everybody. Okay, one player here is a pinch runner. Everybody. Oh man, yes, everybody struck out at least once.
Yeah.
No. Correction. Okay, Grace McGoldrick. Okay, she played second base, and she did not strike out, but she only had one at bat. Again, you'd have to look at the play-by-play here. As a matter of fact, okay. I mean, looking at Maine, top of the first, 3 strikeouts. Top of the second, 2 strikeouts and a flyout. Okay, top of the third, 2 strikeouts and a ground out to third on a bunt, no less. McGoldrick there. Okay. Top of the fourth, pop up on a bunt, strikeout. Fifth, okay, got a walk with a pinch runner, strikeout. Okay, 6th inning, hit by pitch, McGoldrick. Okay, that explains it. Strikeout, bunt, strikeout. And in the 7th, strikeout. Now, imagine calling a game like that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Remember the K corner, right? Could you have that going on right there?
Just keep piling them up.
Yeah, it really is. So they move on to the second game of the doubleheader, right? And they wound up losing that one in extra innings. So that one goes 8, and they really never have a lead in the game. In the third inning, it's 2-1. in the third inning. Maine scores 2, Stony Brook scores 1. In the fifth inning, Maine scores 4, Stony Brook scores 3 to make the score 6-4. It gets tied up in the seventh. It gets tied up in the sixth inning here. Maine scores 1 to give themselves 7. Stony Brook scores 3 to give themselves 7. And then a no score in the seventh inning. It goes into the eighth inning. And that's when Kelly Clark homered into left field, and then that's the winning run right there. I mean, a walk-off homer. So you can imagine it's like the complete opposite feel from the first game, right? The first game you're like elated because
And it was a pinch hit home run, no less.
Yeah. So that was got to be one of those, just a deflator. Especially when you kind of like climb back into the game and you claw back into the game.
What's even worse is that in the bottom of the eighth, the Seawolves had a base runner, and they had a runner in scoring position, and Orozco grounded out short to end it. But Seawolves had a chance to tie it there. But overall, okay, not a bad week.
No, I as a matter of fact, I think it's a real nice week.
End up taking, if you include, the loss against St. John's is going to be a tough one, but they get a rematch on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how that game goes on Tuesday as well. It'll be played at Stony Brook, so it'll be at University Field. It'll be interesting to see, like you were saying, though, it's a midweek game, so you get to put some players in that you don't normally put in. Today's game was canceled because of the rain. I don't know. Do you think is Tuesday going to get in, or is it Wednesday that's not?
Tuesday should be good. Wednesday's questionable. And now Wednesday, because it's non-conference, that could get banged. But I'm just looking at the weather forecast here, and we're doing it the same way. Everybody looking up on their smartphones.
Yeah. But Wednesday and Thursday look like the days, right?
Yeah, Wednesday and Thursday look pretty nasty. 80% chance of rain, 91% on Thursday. I have my doubts, but Tuesday looks good.
Yes. Now, here's a question. So you're going against? Does that just get Seton Hall gets rained out? That's it.
Yeah, because it's a non-conference game. They're not going to make that up. America East, as a matter of policy, and we saw this during basketball season, they want to make up as many games as possible because at that point, COVID was the issue. And it can still be the issue, don't get me wrong. But if for a rain out, because seedings matter in terms of the tournament, especially when the top 4 go, or top 6, depending on which sport you're following, you don't want someone to be out by half a game, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
You want everybody to play the same number of games. So, but the only thing about it is that they already canceled one conference game, that third conference game against Maine. But Maine, on the other hand, we're not worried about them doing much because they're 4-24, something like that.
Yeah, but I also think with Maine, it's like logistically speaking, when can they play each other?
Now, that's the other problem because they're up in Orono, Maine, and they have great baseball and softball facilities, but they would have to go up there, and I don't believe that there will be any. No, they're not going up there this year. So, and I don't think Maine is anywhere near. We'd have to look at their schedule, but I don't think Maine is going to be anywhere near Stony Brook. So getting the two together, that's why it says canceled, not postponed. But in any case, the Seawolves are doing what they need to do because they're 1-1 in the conference right now. But time to flip the card and go to baseball because the baseball team is turning in some solid performances. They are at 7-2, which I believe puts them in a tie with Maine baseball right now. And guess where they're going to be very soon? They went to Maine and took 2 out of 3. So that's definitely a feather in their cap. They took on Hartford up in Hartford, and they have a very nice facility up there too, and they took 2 out of 3 there. So They're looking good. They will be at Manhattan on Wednesday, and then they've got a big series this coming weekend. We're going to get the Sunday game in against Albany because, of course, we got Lacrosse on Friday and Saturday.
The if they're tied with Maine, would they get the tiebreaker there because they got the series?
Well, yeah. The head-to-head would be the next tiebreaker if it matters. Now, obviously, doesn't now, but
Right.
yeah, the first that is usually the first tiebreaker.
But it would for the regular season conference,
Yeah, regular season
right?
conference title definitely.
Title, right? That would matter.
Sure.
That means something. That in a sense, that's really what they should be. That's what you're playing for. And just a side note on this one, so that was really interesting because and I'm hoping we're gonna get into the NCAA tournament after this. And by the way,
correction, Carolina, we're actually gonna get Friday's game in and Sundays, so good. Interesting too. While I'm on the subject, Saturday, April 9th is going to be a men's and women's lacrosse doubleheader at Laval Stadium. You got the men at noon against NJIT and the women right after them against New Hampshire. So we're going to bring you both those games.
And I was just about to say that South Carolina won the women's national championship in basketball, so congratulations to them.
Yep. Game was decided in the first quarter, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, I wanted to bring up the fact that when they, obviously Duke loses last night, and we'll talk about that game as well too. But I thought Mike Krzyzewski had an interesting thing. He had mentioned that all the teams in the Final Four were champions because they won their region championship, right?
Right.
And I thought that was an interesting point, and Charles Barkley had brought that up. He's like, they're all four teams are champions. Only one can bring the big championship home. Right. And that's why you cut down the nets for the Final Four and whatnot. And I think for these teams right now, I think that's what let's play for the regular season championship.
Yeah.
Right. You still can get a championship.
You still hang a banner. You still get all the honors, and you also kind of stick it to them saying, you kicked us out of the tournament because you're afraid of us.
Right.
Which I do believe was a factor. There's no doubt in my mind that was a factor because you remember you and I did the men's basketball game the evening within hours of the bomb being dropped.
Yeah.
And we saw the emotion. We saw how the men's team felt just going into that game. And at that point, they were knocking on the door. I don't think they would have caught Vermont because Vermont just ran away with the regular season title. But you never know. They probably could have secured a 2 seed, and you never know what could have happened after that.
Actually, I think for all the teams that it's occurred with right now, I think that the men's basketball team was most affected by it. And you're right. I don't think they would have caught Vermont either. I just think that it would have just been too much, right? It just became too much for them. It's just kind of like Vermont was too much, and then the schedule and the season became too much, and it kind of got out of their hands. Obviously, we know about the women's basketball team, and I think there's a shot that they obviously make they played poorly down the stretch, but I also think they would make the tournament. The women's lacrosse team, I think they're going to get in, even without it. But you'd like to see the men's lacrosse team be able to play for it as well too right now, and obviously the baseball team as well too.
Unfortunately, neither will because their non-conference schedule, the non-conference record is not very good.
Yeah, you know what? Who would you have scheduled for baseball now that we're getting into it right now? Who would you have scheduled for baseball?
If I was an independent,
provided you maybe not even an independent. Let's put it like if you're going to be. That you're America. You're going to play your America East schedule, but you're not going to go into the tournament to the America East. Who are the other teams you play?
It would be it's a great question to ask Matt Senk. Stopping by in the afternoon after a practice and stuff like that, and hanging out in his office. Because these are questions I've asked them, not necessarily on the air, but definitely off to the side, about putting schedules together. Because over the years, and again, he's refined this technique over the years, because I remember one year he said, I think my schedule non-conference was too tough because it took the guys too long to recover from getting beat up by it. But
It's psychologically.
psychologically,
Right? Because
yes. Yeah.
for sure, I can see that.
And he says, look, I'm going to warm weather places, number one. Number two, I know these teams are better than we are. And number three, you know, the question is how much better. I mean, for example, I'll cite the example Iona. Okay. Team they played on Wednesday, we broadcast the game on WUSB. Okay, let me just open up the baseball schedule, because what I really want to do, because I believe they played Tennessee. And Iona has not won a game all year. And they lost 2 to Stony Brook. They lost on March 16th, 9-1. And of course they lost 10-0 on Wednesday. But just taking a look at Iona, just a second, as their baseball schedule. Because I looked at this as I was prepping for the game the other day. Yeah, they got swept by Old Dominion. They went down to Old Dominion. They got beat on by Tennessee. Now, of course, they got beat up by Albany too, but Delaware. But look, they're 0-23 now because they lost 3 games over the weekend in the MAC. But the WSB Stony Brook, by the way, top of the hour. But Tennessee, a team from the MAC going up against Tennessee.
Yeah, that is.
First of all, any SEC team, you're going to run into trouble.
Yeah,
okay.
No.
You had to be the 2012 team to be an SEC team. Of course, Stony Brook did in the Super Regional. They beat LSU.
Right.
But,
yeah.
A team at Iona's level going to Tennessee, they can get murdered. And if you notice, we don't play Tennessee.
Yeah. I actually got an opportunity to watch Tennessee practice about 5 or 7 years ago. I was with my wife in Tennessee. We were in Nashville, and we went in the opposite direction. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, we went and watched Vanderbilt, and I guess where were we in Tennessee? So we were in Tennessee for whatever, and we watched it. What an unbelievable practice to watch them go. Like clockwork.
But it gets worse. How bad? You want to know how badly they got murdered? 27-1, 29-0, and 12-2.
Oh.
I think by the third game, I didn't look at the box score. They probably brought all their freshmen in.
Yeah, I don't know. You set yourself up for. That's like some of these colleges that in football as well too. Football is the worst because physically, football you can really hurt yourself. Baseball is a little different. I think you can get emotionally scarred here in that, but I don't think. But I guess if you're Iona, you're going with the idea that we're gonna play these guys and it's gonna help you recruit. But you got to win games too, right?
Yeah, I hate to be on that Iona team because they're probably thinking by now they're Charlie Brown, the Peanuts gang, because they're winless. But they got to be on the same field with Tennessee with a bunch of potential major leaguers on it, but you couldn't even compete. And again, one of the saddest games I ever had to call was 2010 NCAA regional against Coastal Carolina. What happened was we got beat by Coastal Carolina not too badly in the first game, defeated NC State in the second game in the loser bracket, so got Coastal Carolina back and got mauled by one of those 22-run scores because we flat out ran out of pitching. And that was 2010. Okay. 2 years later, we're in Omaha.
There's something about that with a good team, though. When you're a good team that takes a loss like that, it almost gives you the fuel to say, okay, this is if we really want to be this caliber of team, we need to do X, Y, and Z in the off season.
And Coastal Carolina has since won a national championship. They upgraded their program considerably. And they played, I don't know if they still do, but because their field was under construction, their regular on-campus field, they played at the Myrtle Beach Pelicans home stadium. So we got to do it from Minor League Park.
That's cool. But you know what I'm saying? Like you get an opportunity to play a team like that when you're a good team, when you're a quality team, then you can say, okay, this is we just need it. It's not a big distance from good to great.
Well, yeah, and
You know,
even
but,
Matt Sank said right after the game, I believe this team has the capability of getting into a super regional, and that's where he had his goals set, getting to the super regional, winning it.
were you were you shocked when you heard that from him? Was that like when he told you that was that like one of those like in your
I
mind you're saying
wasn't
to yourself, no
necessarily
way?
after what they had done to NC State. If they had not
Okay.
beaten NC State, just got 2-0, okay, fine, that might have been a little bit lofty. But after what they had done to NC State, I said, you know what? Couple of tweaks here and there, a little bit of extra pitching depth, and he may be right.
Yeah. And he was.
Yeah,
And he
because
was.
because they acquitted themselves. I mean, like I said, they ran out of pitching, but if they all they needed was a couple more tweaks, and I mean, it was unbelievable what they were able to do. But now, one of those tweaks, which they didn't have yet at the time because he was a freshman, Frankie Van Derka. Because Frankie, first of all, threw a couple of no hitters in the regular season, but he threw a complete game in game 3 against LSU. And
Yeah, and then just to be able to do that, right? To have somebody that can stand up and do something like
yeah,
that,
and then
right?
I mean, I've told this story time and time again on these airways, but I'll repeat it for those who've forgotten. Uh, the first game, we went into what happened was we had a 1-run lead going into the bottom of the ninth, but foul ball down the left field line was a little bit too far for the left fielder whose name escapes me at this point, but and extended an at bat, which resulted in a hit, knocked in a run. Well, the Seawolves put up another run up in the top half of the 10th, and they answer with a home run. Another run in the 11th, they answer with a home run. And then a monsoon comes in, like one of those summer rains that happen only in Louisiana. I mean, that's why it's a big bayou swamp.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, which just knocked out the game. Had to resume it the next day. So strategy for LSU was to bring out their starter, their game 2 starter, who was supposed to finish the Seawolves off, Kevin Gausman. You know him, major leaguer.
Yeah.
Okay, so pitch 1 inning, we'll score in the bottom half, we're done, then start game 2. It's exactly what he did. Put up a goose egg. They knock in a run, not on a home run, but a couple of hits, and they win game 1. Then he's got to pitch game 2 with a little bit of a hiatus in between. The Seawolves get to him. They actually beat him. And then in game 3, we, outpitched, I forget who pitched game 3 for them, but Van Derka won it. So, I mean, like I said, I've said this before, I've covered a lot of big events, but being able to call that run, probably one of the greatest thrills of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's got to be
Because
high up there. Yeah.
even though 8 teams go to the College World Series, it is the Final Four.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the event.
It is the Final Four of baseball, and
Yes.
you get there, and the baseball team. Look, we have a field with no press box now. Joe Nathan Field had opened the year 2 years before, so the field turf was down. It was nice facility, but still has no lights. It still doesn't have a press box, and it's still not where it should be at the very least. But having everything come together. I mean, obviously the peak of Matt Sink's career, because he also got National Coach of the Year out of the deal.
Right.
I also think if a freshman shortstop didn't airmail a ball, we might have actually won a game in Omaha.
Yeah, that'd been awesome.
Because if you would have been the third out, it would have been out of the inning 2-0. Instead, it prolonged the inning and 3 more runs scored, and actually 5 runs scored, made 7-0. That was it. We were dead against Florida State. I mean, UCLA killed us, but Florida State, that game was winnable, but got out of hand, ended up losing it big.
Yeah, and it's just funny how you can draw it back to a play like that in a game, right? Where you can draw it back to like I was saying to you, like Matt Sank, when he said that to you, it wasn't shocking to you. And when you say that about the game, where you have an error in this inning at the wrong time, just changes the game, right? And it changes the dynamic of the game
Oh, even Sank
and what you're
himself said it.
doing.
The error. I mean, what are you gonna do though? Errors happen. But
Yes, yeah, it's part of the game.
okay, it's on the pitcher too, because even though yes, you're asking a pitcher to get a fourth out, yeah, get that fourth out. And that's the best way to describe it, because I remember, a reporter friend of mine, longtime, AP writer, explained this to me. I mean, these are things that you know already, but when somebody clarifies it to you, it becomes so much more, committed to memory. But
Mhm.
that's why, you think about it. Think about how many times a fielder makes an error in an inning, and yes, it extends the inning, but more often than not, the team scores.
Yeah,
And
it's
sometimes innings get out of hand as a result of that, but because of an error.